I'm going to show you how to analyze articles, and today's article from New Scientist magazine, and I think, yeah, it was published on the 10th of January 2026. All right, what we have to do is we should find new words and the pronunciation of some words while we are reading the article. Why articles are important? First of all, the main the advantage of reading articles daily, it is activating the vocabulary in your brain. You may know a lot of words, but um, if you read them, if you see them less often, it may lead to disappearance of them in your memory. As a result, next time it feels that you know the word, but you don't get the meaning of it. And furthermore, they help you to think in another language because you should try to understand the passage. Um, at least, some of you may say that okay, sometimes we try to translate it, but over years, over practice, automatically the speed of your translation from English into your own language gets faster and faster. As a result, once you feel that you are understanding the passage without translating them in your head. And you see a lot of vocabulary, you see a lot of grammar rules that you've learned. If you face any new, it's gonna be hidden gem that improves your level. And you may come across new words, or you may not know the pronunciation of some words, for example. So it's the best chance to uh, how can I say, to make your language alive. It's the one of the interesting and intriguing parts of language, I guess. And furthermore, the main effect that most language learners don't pay attention to is the knowledge that you get from the articles. You learn something. You learn a knowledge. Your um, wisdom expands. Your the everything in your knowledge, I guess, expands reading articles. So I highly recommend, and even I require my IELTS students to read articles um, at least one in 2 days. But nowadays we are reading 2 pages, meaning that they should read an article a day. It's completely useful for everything. And then I ask my students to retell the article because when you retell, you try to use the information that you retained, that you understand. If you don't understand, you cannot speak. As a result, you may reread the article. And furthermore, while retelling it, you may use some vocabulary that you learned from it, or at least you can use words and parts of the language that you have in a better way. It's going to be improvement. Uh, as there is a saying called "practice makes perfect." The reading articles is one of the most beneficial ways of improving your language. So try to read them daily and try to retell them to yourself or to your friends. And having discussion would be even better if you have plenty of time. Well, let's start. So our today's article is most of our genome really is junk. Uh, Genome. Okay, let's check the pronunciation of the word because I'm not sure. Pra, okay, let's write meaning. We get the meaning and at the same time pronunciation of it.
Genome. Genome.
Genome. Okay, if it does.
Genome.
Genome. What? There's a vessel. Genome. American
Genome.
genome. Genome. Yeah, most of our genome really is junk. Genome, as far as I know, it is a part of our gene. It's a haploid set of chromosomes in a gamete microorganisms in each. Oh, what was that? Yeah, with simple words, it's the entire set of DNA instruction found in a cell. Yeah, it's our DNA set, genome. It's a really common word in IELTS reading. Sometimes you may come across with these words in listening to part four, for example. All right, human plant hybrid cells have been used to show how our DNA activity is mostly just random noise, reports Michael Lepage. Um, what does it mean? Human hybrid cells have been used. Uh, human plant hybrid. Hybrid or gybrid. Hybrid means it's a kind of mixed thing.
Hybrid.
Hybrid. Oh, hybrid.
Hybrid.
Hybrid. All right. Hybrid. Human plant hybrid cells have been used to show how our DNA activity is mostly just random noise. So it's kind of random, really. All right. How much of our genome really matters? Some argue that because most of our DNA is active, it must be doing something important. Others say even random DNA would be highly active. This has now been put to the test by studying human cells containing massive chunks of plant DNA. New science can exclusively reveal and effectively random plant DNA was indeed nearly as active as human DNA. And all right, the finding shows that a high proportion of genome activity is just noise. It makes a noise, and those adds to the evidence that most of human genome is junk. It seems, I guess, somehow unnecessary. The findings show that a high proportion of genome activity is just noise. Okay, I don't get here. Let's use the internet to, something is just noise, meaning. No, it may have another meaning here because unimportant, yeah, you see that it has a meaning of unimportant. Okay, a large amount can simply be explained by background noise. Says this seems to be broadly consistent with the junk DNA idea. It has some kind of activity and they make some noise. And this seems to be broadly consistent with junk DNA ideas. The main function of DNA is to store the recipes for making protein, the molecular machines that do almost all the work in cells. The DNA recipes are copied to make messenger RNAs that carry the recipes to ribosomes, the cell's protein making factories. Okay, understood. It's initially assumed that almost all DNA consists of recipes for making proteins, but we know we now know that just 1.2% of the human genome codes for proteins. Oh, really? So what does the rest do? Since 1960, many biologists have argued that it's mostly junk. Yes, a small percentage of non-protein coding DNA is really important, and we are likely to keep discovering bits to useful things for decades. But such discoveries, they say, won't change the overall picture. For instance, in 2011 study found that only around 5% of the genome is conserved over deep time. Conserved, that's just pronunciation. Conserved or conserved. I don't need this. conserved, 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 yeah, conserved. The 50% of the genome is conserved over deep time. Evolution doesn't seem to care about the rest of it. Biologists in the most jank, where is it? Biologists um, in the mostly jank junk pump also point out that the sorry, size of genomes varies widely among species. Why does an opinion need 5 times as much DNA as human, for instance? An onion need 5 times as much DNA as human. Why does a lungfish have 30 times as much, really? But other biologists have focused on whether human DNA does anything, for instance, whether it gets turned into RNA, even if that RNA has no known purpose. In 2012, a large project called ENCODE concluded that more than 8% of the human genome was active in this sense and claimed this showed that it isn't junk after all. Some biologists in the campus use the term dark DNA to refer to non-coding DNA, the idea being it's important for reasons we don't yet understand. In response to the ENCODE's claim in 2013, Sean Eddy at Harvard University proposed the Random Genome Project. Suppose we put a few million bases of entirely random syn- synthetic DNA into a human cell and do an ENCODE project on it. Will we still see all the activities in code hailed as proof function? I think yes, Eddie concluded. You can't really conclude anything just from measuring activity, and so that's the brilliance of Sean Eddy's random genome idea that what we really need is a baseline. Baseline. I kinda understand the meaning, but better explanation doesn't harm.
Baseline. Baseline.
Baseline. A minimum starting point, a minimum or starting point used for comparison. All right, baseline. Um, without a baseline, anything you look at is not really meaningful in terms of deciding between function and junk. Making synthetic DNA, however, is expensive. Until now, the only attempts at a random genome project have involved a small piece of DNA no longer than around 100,000 base pairs. Which word I just a second. Synthetic. I have to okay, work on the pronunciation of it.
Synthetic.
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 Synthetic. Synthetic. Synthetic. It's American ones.
Synthetic.
Synthetic. Synthetic.
Synthetic.
Synthetic.
Synthetic.
Synthetic. Synthetic. Synthetic. Um, where did I stop? Yeah. But when Eddie and Ganley learned that researchers in Japan had created human plant hybrid cells containing 35 million base pairs of DNA from tail cress, they realized that this could be seen as by far the largest random genome project to date. Mhm. The noise can actually create interesting things that can then be picked up by selection. Eddie who wasn't involved in the study, agrees plants and animals diverged from a common ancestor at least 1.6 billion years ago. So in that time, mutations have effectively randomized the non-coding DNA in a Thaliana, I think it's type of plant, yeah. And every single site has mutated several times. It is estimated when asked about this approach of the initial studies to check that the plant DNA is indeed effectively random. As far as the human cell is concerned, Ede and Ganlison measured the number of uh, wait, 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 wait. Starting point for turning DNA into RNA per thousand base pairs of non-coding DNA. Okay, I didn't get this part. How is it challenging? Effectively random. As far as the human cells is concerned, they measure it, the number of starting points for turning DNA into RNA per thousand base pairs of non-coding DNA. If DNA being turned into RNA really is a sign of function, then hardly any plant DNA should be turned into RNA. In reality, Addy and Ganley found only slightly less activity. There were around 80% as many start sites per kilobase of non-coding. Ethylenia DNA compared with human non-coding DNA. Um, somehow confusing. In reality, they found only slightly less activity. Okay. Yes, they found it in the plant's DNA. So there were around 80% of as many start sites per kilobase of non-coding DNA compared to human coding. Okay, making a noise. In other words, this strongly suggested almost all the activity seen by encode is noise. This very elegant study was needed, says Dan Grauer at the University of Houston, Texas. Elegant, the pronunciation, or elegant,
Elegant.
elegant, sorry,
Elegant.
elegant, elegant. Yes, this very elegant study was needed. It offers yet more experimental or experimental, experimental,
Experimental.
experimental, mental, mental,
Experimental.
experimental. Yeah, experimental. It offers yet more experimental evidence confirming what has been obvious for years. Most of the human genome is junk. The term dark DNA is a laughable nonsense dreamed up by people with a bad case of physics anyway. So, all right. In a perfectly designed system, there would be no noise, says gently, but evolution doesn't create perfect designs, and noise can have advantages. If you have these imperfect systems that have a lot of noise, that noise can actually create interesting things that can be picked up by selection, he says. I got somehow. Yeah, as yet, the team can't explain why there was 25% more activity in human DNA. All we can really say is that needs explanation, says Ganley. It's possible some of the extra RNAs do have functions. This would not change the mostly junk conclusion, but there are other potential explanations. The researchers are using machine learning to see if they can find ways to distinguish potentially meaningful activity from background noise. And the team plans to publish the findings, but hasn't yet written a paper. All right. Right now, I read the article. I somehow understood, let's say, around 80% of it. As you can see, I reread some parts of the article as it was puzzling and not puzzling, let's say, hard to comprehend. It's okay to do so. And as my vocabulary is, as I have huge amount of vocabulary, as you can see, mostly I didn't look for the meanings of the words. Um, I almost know all the words written there, but sometimes I have problems with the pronunciation of them. Yeah, genome, I recheck the meaning of it. The noise, I try to find the another meaning of the word, but here it was used in both meanings, the noise and the sound, and it may have the meaning of unnecessary, irrelevant, unimportant, and baseline,
Baseline.
baseline. All right. Um, but while you are doing reading, if you can, as I said, uh, find new words, you have to, for example, this word exclusively. Exclusively, it may be specially, but I'm not sure you should find it. You write to exclusively. And if you search for the kind of, you may find the translation also, but the best way is explanation to exclusion of others. Only, yes, enough only, as the only source. Paints produced
Exclusively.
exclusively. Paints produced exclusively for independent retailers. They are produced for only for independent retailers. Good. I can exclusively reveal that Jail shares a birthday with Rod Stewart. Uh, I can only reveal that. I can only tell that if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, exclusively. And you can take notes or you can just screenshot this part and send your device. If you have channel, you can send your Telegram channel or somewhere, or you can write them down. And after finishing it, you had better just think about it because you have to record your voice. Yeah, and I mostly send my voice on my Telegram channel, for example. Then you will start talking about it. Just a second. Okay, now you had better take some notes. Let's take some notes to speak better. Mostly, I can send my audios on the way in a hurry as I don't have much time. So mostly I don't take notes. As a result, my fluency may be flawed. All right. Article. Okay, what was the topic? Topic was about the genome and opinions. Opinions. Yeah, there was opinions and experiments. Okay, what was that? There was information about that the genome was junk. Then there was opposing views that say that uh, dark genome, but further experiments proved that 80%. I'm not sure. In the numbers, I don't think they are so important while we're speaking. Personally, I think like this. If you can't remember the exact numbers, it's all right. 80% are just noise. So further experiment with the plant by random. What's my conclusion? Conclusion, I think, yeah, mm, our DNA, our DNA doesn't seem very sophisticated, but I personally don't believe it. But I don't believe it. Okay. Your your notes shouldn't be completely correct. It's just to give you the idea for speaking. Okay, let's start. How I will start. Well, right now I'd like to talk about the article that I read now. The article was called "The Genome is Noise," if I'm not mistaken. Um, the article's main point was about um, that the um, most part of the our DNA are useless, or at least they just kinda they don't do kinda any kind of useful activity, and opinions and experiments of different science over this topic. Firstly, there were some experiments on human genome, and scientists found that that there was a belief that our DNA genomes mostly helped create protein cells, and then later experiments revealed that only 1.2% of them can do it. So the rest of the genome uh, seems doing nothing, and seems to do nothing. And as a result, scientists try to kind of find out the reason for it, or whether it's correct or not. Some scientists thought that this part of our genomes are just junk, and however, some scientists mentioned that there must be some reason or purpose of these um, particles, if you can say so. So they used to call it a dark genome, if I'm not mistaken, because they have the functions, they have the responsibilities that we don't know yet. We didn't know yet at the time. However, some scientists didn't believe, and they made some experiments. One of these experiments uh, had been done, if I'm not mistaken, in Japan, and they collected around 100,000 genomes of some kind of plant, and they analyzed it, and they concluded that most part of the plant's genome uh, just make noise. They don't do any kind of specific activity. And then it somehow supported the idea of human DNA too. And so most scientists start to think that most of our genomes can be also junk because it makes a noise. However, there may be some uh, kind of purpose of noise too. They say that it may help to be selected. As we know, science try to explain the evolution of animals and people by natural selection. Um, it seems to me that the science just try to show that how our world, natural world, is not perfect. They want to show the imperfections of our creation, and all these experiments and information shows that yes, we are not as sophisticated and perfect as we thought. as it's said everywhere. However, I personally don't believe it because there are so many things that there are so many things beyond our knowledge, beyond our capability of understanding, our comprehension. So this may be one of them. Uh, Maybe in the future, this topic will be more explained. So that's my thoughts. Then I'll send my uh, retelling. Let's see, article retelling 5. To be honest, nowadays somehow I'm a bit lazy. That's why I haven't been sending the tasks regularly. So all right, that's what you have to do if you want to improve your language by using articles.